Hi, I'm Catherine Ayers-Wickenhauser, Director of Communications at Direct Trust. I'm so excited today to be joined by Didi Davis from the Sequoia Project, who has recently been named one of our Interop heroes. So, hi, Didi, welcome. Would you please tell us some more about yourself and about the Sequoia Project?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity today, but also for having me on. And I was humbled and honored for, the communication where I got the real award. So again, thank you so much. Tell you about myself. My official title is Vice President of Informatics, Conformance, and Interoperability, meaning I wear multiple hats for Sequoia in supporting our various companies and our programs. I've worked in this industry for over 30 years, so I'm dating myself just a bit, for various organizations. Those included a university hospital, multiple vendors for about 16 years. I worked with HIMSS national organization, launching the first interoperability showcases in the US, in Europe, and in Asia. I left HIMSS in 2009 and I launched an LLC, my own company, which was called Serendipity Health. And I filled several different executive roles in that company, executive leadership roles such as the CEO and interim CEO for CareSpark, which was one of the first health information exchanges in the US, CTO for the state of Tennessee, working with 5 different regional and state HIEs, worked with insurance companies and just different organizations deploying connected health information exchange. From there, one of my contracts was the Sequoia Project, actually. So I was a contractor before I was an employee. Started here in Sequoia in 2013. And today I'm the staff lead for the data usability work group and some of the industry stakeholders to help improve the quality and usability of data exchanged. I do represent us at various standards bodies, including IHE, HL7, DICOM for imaging, just lots of those acronym soups that you may be somewhat familiar with. I worked with a direct project back in 2010 when it was being led by Erin Malik. So you'll see my name in some of those project papers if you dig through the archives and so forth. But I'm happy to say that the standards used today, I've worked with all of the standards bodies, but I also run 6 testing programs for the Sequoia Project in partnership with folks like the RSNA, the Radiological Society of North America, and others. So that's a little bit about myself. A little bit more about Sequoia. Sequoia is a nonprofit, a 501c3, really with the goal and mission of advancing interoperability for the public good, really. Sequoia acts as a trusted advocate, a convener for nationwide health information exchange. And we work with really the public, private sector, as well as government stakeholders to really address health IT interoperability. A bit about our history. Sequoia was formed in 2012 as the home for what was then known as the Nationwide Health Information Network, the NHIN from back in the day. We launched Care Quality in 2014, which was really a way to take eHealth Exchange, which was a network, and figure out a way to put together a policy and a technical framework to allow multiple networks to interconnect to each other, to interoperate. In 2018, we actually completed a corporate restructuring where eHealth Exchange and Care Quality both became their own, they were transitioned to become a separate operating entity, each in their own right, with their own governance, their own board of directors. And we also in 2018 rebranded ourselves Sequoia, relaunching ourselves as really the home for what we call the Interoperability Matters Forum. And then most recently in 2019, we were chosen by ONC as the recognized coordinating entity, helping lead the TEFCA, the ONC TEFCA RCE work, and trying to really put together some work groups and feedback loops to inform not only ONC, but hopefully make TEFCA successful.
Wonderful, Didi. And you touched on so many different aspects of health IT and interoperability, just describing your background and where you've been involved. And it's incredible to think of everything you've seen so far and all that's in progress and what's to come. And even in describing the Sequoia Project and eHealth Exchange and Care Quality, I'm always struck by the collaboration and the community, knowing that there are these organizations that are similar to Direct Trust, but we all have kind of our own unique strengths, and seeing how these organizations come together and collaborate and just all really support each other in the pursuit of advancing interoperability. It's always motivating to me. I've always really appreciated that. And I have been curious just listening to you describe all that you've seen so far. How have you seen that community and collaboration show up in your personal work?
Great question. I guess I've always felt like a kindred spirit to all the standards geeks out there, and I found many friends among my colleagues over time. But I continue really to be amazed at the level of collaboration across all of our industry to really create what I'm always going to preach, a standards-based exchange, really to form, I like to say, Lego blocks that really pull together the interoperability nationally, but also globally. Some of these Lego blocks that all these standards bodies have been working on, believe it or not, since 2000. I've been doing interoperability since 2001 with standards organizations. So it sometimes takes a while and it's a journey, so to speak, but I'm very happy to say that the collaboration I've seen over that time, and that's now been 20 years, I see all those standards actually being deployed. And because they were, the collaboration that got us there really well defined the problem, because we brought users together at the table, bringing their vendors to the table so that we could really hopefully affect that change. Most recently, I've seen a whole new community and collaboration form around HL7 Fire and some of those standards. Fire brought a wider group of stakeholders together to really innovate on some of the workflows, to modernize them to a certain extent, but we don't want to lose sight of what's working today. So there's still a lot of work to be completed in the fire space. So I'm starting to see the collaboration and really the industry taking lessons learned from what we already have in place, but figuring out ways to innovate and add on to those workflows to really hopefully spur improvements and innovation as we move forward to hopefully make it so that we can engage the patients more. I'm seeing much more patient engagement, which is very, very good for me, not only being a patient in my own right here and there, but also being a patient advocate for, my family and friends and so forth.
Sure, Didi. And, I think this is a perfect segue into my next question. And I want to back up for just a second, but you mentioned the Interoperability Showcase, with which many of us know and love, and even thinking about the collaboration that occurs in those connected demonstrations and bringing together those different entities. But thinking about the advent of the Interoperability Showcase and from there until now and even the future, and you just touched on this with some of the advancements that we're seeing with Interop and patient and consumer access, but how have you seen interoperability progress? Can you describe that a little bit more in detail?
Absolutely. Well, specifically around the showcase, it went from literally, I'll say the first showcase was launched in 2004. Back then, I wasn't working for HIMSS. I was a volunteer for HIMSS. They must have loved what I did, so they hired me. But in 2006, I actually started putting together a real business model. But back in that time, the first showcase, we literally had less than 20 organizations connected. And it was all, here's the vision of what can be if you have interoperability. It wasn't real. Today, the Interoperability Showcase, I'm kind of the proud mother, I guess. I'm very proud of what it's become. And now it's a huge venue, one of the largest draws for him. So I'm very happy to see its progress. And what they demonstrate is what's really happening. That's real interoperability, but also showing some pockets of what's working well in different areas so that others can get those ideas. But you asked more about, what I've seen about interoperability progress in general. I guess I'm happy to see the collaboration of the 360X project, what Direct Trust, helped launch and so forth. It started in 2012. I know the HL7's helping lead some of the work, but I'm actually seeing the 360X standards baked into vendor workflows that leverage direct trust, leverage IHE, which is another one of those standards, and other standards to support those push transactions. So I'm seeing that more ubiquitous across the industry. These standards are really widely deployed today and can be used by any type of payload. So I'm seeing real innovations showing how direct can be used to even transport fire information, believe it or not. So that's one piece. I think the scenarios that 360X covers are very near and dear with referral management, acute care setting transfers to skilled nursing facilities, those kinds of things. So really taking that discrete data, putting it in the right place at the right time, for the right decision to be made by those clinicians. Another significant improvement that I've seen, I guess, is the quality of the data that's exchanged. I'm very happy to say that for the past 3 years, I've worked with the eHealth Exchange Network to conduct a content testing program. And they were kind of a pioneer. They actually said, look, this network is only as good as the data that's exchanged on it. So they actually in 2018 put a stamp saying, hey, everyone must pass content against meaningful use, which is what everybody in the industry was already focused on anyway. The collaboration, including working closely with the participants of the network, the eHealth Exchange vendors that make up that network, to pass the content requirements. I'm happy to report that after 3 years, we started off kind of, wondering if we'll ever get there. 3 years ago, nobody passed content. And 3 years later, I'm happy to say that we're at 98% who are now passing as we close this year of 2021. So it does take a while. I have had to learn patience, but we are getting there. And then I guess the third piece that I'm really happy to see, the start of interoperable image exchange. So everywhere else in the world, X-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, imaging is very much exchanged. But here in the US, because meaningful use didn't focus on it, we really never prioritized it. Vendors didn't make it a priority. But I worked with RSNA over the last several years since 2016, at least in the US, and working with Care Quality, who launched a use case. I can say I owe many thanks to RSNA, who collaborated with Sequoia and with Care Quality, who launched their use case to really advance imaging. And we're starting to see some of that actually, become a reality, meeting that policy framework. So I think imaging, data quality, and of course the 360 push data, so that information, if I'm discharged from an organization or if I'm needing to be referred to somebody, they have that information to know what they need to do to take the best care of me.
Absolutely. And, I'm just struck by listening to you describe the progress from your perspective. How could you not be energized by interoperability? How could you not be excited by it and the progress that's been made? And to me, really, it is so exciting. 3 years is a long time, but it's also a short time for a significant amount of change to happen. And it's just incredible. I think, going back to part of this conversation earlier, looking at all the different people and entities and organizations involved in interoperability, I kind of think of it as like Team Interop. We're all the same. We're all cheerleaders. Yes, and it's really exciting. I think we're all working in our own unique ways, but how that work comes together, and you just described some of those standards efforts and how they come together and advance interoperability together. So I'm all for Team Interop. I know you are on Team Interop, and it's really exciting to hear what's happening now, especially looking back to 2004 when the Interop Showcase first started at HIMSS. And so looking towards the future, thinking about kind of what's happening now to set us up for Interop in the future. Can you maybe describe some of those Legos or building blocks, if you will, of what we can expect and what's happening in your world of work that we can look forward to?
Sure. Of course, I'm going to kind of focus on some things I know Sequoia is doing, because we are trying to advance that for that public good. Some examples of what Sequoia is doing, where we launched our Interoperability Matters Forum. There are now 3 work groups. So we launched the forum originally in 2018, but over that period of time, we also have launched additional, what I would call work groups, really working to advance the future interoperability issues bring them to light, one, but also collaborate on providing education or guidance or feedback loops to hopefully improve what's necessary where there are gaps or issues. One of the work groups that we formed early on was the information blocking work group. So with the regulations that are coming out, the work group's really focused on what I would call practical implications of the proposed rule, as well as unintended consequences that sometimes come around. The work group looks to really capture the varied perspectives, because there's a lot of different perspectives in this world around information blocking, but really to inform the groups and ONC on the process that's needed, as well as improving the understanding across the stakeholders, because with the exceptions and all that, help advise so that they're ready and prepared for it. The second work group under interoperability matters is the one that nearest and dearest to my heart, is the data usability work group. We've been preparing to really hopefully make TEFCA successful by making sure that data is exchanged in a usable format for the clinicians to consume, but also that the computer can consume to enable what we call semantic interoperability. The implementation guidance that the data usability work group is putting out, and will be putting out early next year, will really target improvements that are necessary to enable that semantic interoperability for health information exchange, but also improve the usability of that data. So making sure that what the end user gets are the allergies with the right codes and things like that, so that they can really get quick ideas of decision without having all the data just, in a huge blob, so to speak. And then the third work group is the emergency preparedness work group. This is a work group with COVID-19 that we've just had. It's really providing a forum to learn around health information technology innovations impacting that emergency preparedness. It's really right now somewhat focused on lessons learned from the response to COVID pandemic that we've had and continue, unfortunately, keeps going through those waves, but really looking at the lessons learned as it relates to health information technology and interoperability, including the policy, the regulatory challenges that are part and parcel of it, but also focusing on the key concepts and items to consider to improve things like disaster response for hurricanes or wildfires in California, wherever those challenges may be, but really trying to create a community of practice where public health, the Medicaid agencies, state agencies, federal partners can all learn from the lessons, but also hopefully advance some of the innovations and remove those blockers to interoperability. I know when COVID first came out, we have all this interoperability happening today, but I know a lot of the public health departments, for instance, were worried about, well, I don't want you to send me the whole CCD document, which has all the clinical content in it, because HIPAA says we're only supposed to get minimum required data. So thinking about all those things as an example. So those were the kind of the three work groups Sequoia has actually launched based on leadership and our members saying, here's some areas we need some guidance and education and improvement and so forth. So I know we're working on that. And of course, HL7 and ONC continue advancing the standards. And I know with Direct, we continue working on figuring out innovations of all these evolving standards, including FHIR, on how we can take those highways that have already been built and use them to transport all kinds of different data as needed.
Yeah, absolutely, Didi. And, I'm struck by how incredibly important all of the work that you just outlined is and how necessary it is. And I love the title of that part of the organization of Interoperability Matters, because it really does. And there's so many more areas where we can make progress. And I thank you for outlining all of those. And once again, I want to congratulate you on being recognized as an Interop hero. And I think you've touched on so many different parts of your journey and what you've seen and what you've experienced with Interop. And so with that, I'm also curious, just in general, do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Well, as I like to tell everybody, interoperability is a journey. I'm not a patient person, so while we've made a lot of progress, I still know there's a lot more to go. So sometimes that interoperability journey seems like it's 1,000 miles, but it always begins with one baby step. So I like to point out that many baby steps have been taken and continue being taken by all the stakeholders. The Lego blocks, as I mentioned again, I like to use Legos because I still play with Legos. I'm kind of an adult kid by heart, but they are in place to enable health information exchange. It will take a village to allow all of us to get there, and we need all of you that may be listening to this. We need the industry and multiple champions and the various avenues to support interoperability and continue being passionate about it. Don't give up. It's continuing to be a journey. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution for everything, and we encourage, really should encourage all the stakeholders to contribute not only to the standards but also speaking up in their own organizations to say, hey, I don't like the way this is happening. How can we improve it? So working more collaboratively and not just being told this is the only way to do things. So trying to think outside the box for sure.
I love those final thoughts. That is great. So Didi, thank you again. And to learn more about the Interoperability Hero Initiative or watch more spotlight videos like this, check out the Direct Trust website and the Interop Hero section.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Didi.